Hi, my name is Gibson, and I'm the co-owner and creator of the Personal Development School. This is your daily breakthrough video, and in this video, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about parenting your partner. And this is something I've seen happen in many different attachment style relationships for different reasons. So I've seen, for example, an anxious preoccupied feel like they're taking care of a dismissive avoidant partner in terms of planning and organization and structure at times. And this isn't all, these are just different versions. I've seen dismissive avoidance feel like they're emotionally parenting, the anxious preoccupied when they seem needy or clingy. I've seen fearful avoidance who often feel like they need to be in control of themselves and their environments to feel safe, be parenting the anxious or the dismissive, or vice versa for different reasons. So I want to talk a little bit about some of the dynamics of how this takes place, what it actually is all about at a subconscious level. I'll touch a little bit on like age differences and things like this and why that can come about. And there's nothing negative to be said there, but just some interesting information and research. And then we'll also talk about what to do if you find yourself in this role and maybe some of the negative consequences that can come up if we find ourselves in these positions. Because as somebody who's worked with couples for a very long time, what I've often seen is that there are dire consequences for being in unequal partnerships because each individual's mind is designed to find equilibrium, which means it can look for equilibrium in other forms outside of a relationship if there isn't enough empowerment and equal partnership within a relationship dynamic. So before I dive into all of this stuff and this super interesting topic that I'm so excited to discuss, we are still doing a sale to support our community. The coupon code, if you want to join the All Access Membership Pass, is with you. It's all one word. It's for 25% off, 3-month, 6-month, 12-month bundles. We do a full 30-day money-back guarantee if you're unhappy with the content, because we get amazing, amazing results in there. And we have an incredible community. And the All Access Membership Pass gives you access to all of the courses, all the previous courses that are in there, 30 plus. I think we're at like 34 at the end of this month. And our courses for this month are a post-traumatic growth course, which is an extremely in-depth process of actually processing deeply stored emotion. And then we're also doing an advanced needs course in terms of like communicating, sharing, receiving your needs being met, understanding, the psychology of needs at a subconscious level and how this also impacts the workplace, our relationship with other people, sales, family members, everything. So let's talk about this concept or idea for today. So it's not uncommon in a relationship that we find individuals going into roles where they're seemingly parenting a partner. And this can be like the entire premise of a relationship and something that the relationship is actually foundationally built upon. Or this can be a season in a relationship. But what I want to focus in on here specifically is if this is more of a primary foundation, if you feel, for example, like you're somebody who's always dragging your partner through life, trying to get them to keep up and show up and all these different things. So number one, if this takes place, it's usually because the person who's doing the parenting fears a loss of control somewhere. So it's either a loss of control in the relationship dynamic. It can be a loss of control in the sense of, oh, I'm afraid that if I don't drag this person everywhere with me, that I will be abandoned, which is often an anxious, preoccupied experience. I'm afraid that the relationship will fizzle out, which can be anxious or fearful avoidant. I'm afraid that we won't get things done in time. Sometimes I see in marriages, like one person really taking on a lot of the organizational roles and structures. Now, all of this can be great if somebody's like taking on a specific role and really doing all these things. But where it becomes problematic is if there's an imbalance. So if there is one person taking on all the organization and structure and money management and finances and planning and caretaking of the family and chores around the house and working full-time, and the other person, let's say, for example, is only working full-time. When there becomes an unequal balance, we have like the most intense breeding grounds for resentment to take place. Now, what's interesting about this is this can also be the result of having like a type A partner and a type B partner in a relationship. And some people have these theories out there, which is so interesting. Some people will be like, oh yeah, like that doesn't work in a relationship long term. That's really challenging and toxic in a marriage dynamic. You need people that are on the ssame page. What I often find is that people marry people who are the opposite type of them. Not always, but quite often. And so it's not about like, oh, you need somebody who is exactly on the same page, on the same level. What needs to take place is both parties need to be able to communicate needs, set boundaries, and express acknowledgement and appreciation. And we're going to talk about all of what that means, okay? So here's what happens if we don't have people on the same page and feeling like there's an equal balance in relationships. Let's just use like a very typical example. Let's say we have somebody who's like a very type A, organized person, very structured, and let's say it's the female in the relationship. And obviously we can have two females in a relationship, two males in a relationship, all different genders, and or sexual orientations. But let's just focus on like simple example, stereotypical, sort of controlling, organized, in charge female, and let's say a more like passive, type B, go with the flow, hang out kind of guy who's the husband in a relationship. And often what we'll see is these dynamics where the type A person is controlling the type B person. But just so you know, not only is the type A person craving a person and desiring a person who's going to rise up and meet them and equally partner with them, but the type B person is also not wanting to feel like a child. And what we'll often see is that if there's a type B person who's feeling like they're being parented or controlled or having to touch base or being nagged, criticized, yelled at, all these different things as if they were a child, often what we'll find is that this person, let's say it's the man, or let's say it's, the man wants to feel like a man somewhere. And oftentimes then if somebody comes along and looks up to that man or, relies on that man, maybe a coworker or a colleague, it's not uncommon, and I'm not saying this is the only way this will take place, but it's not uncommon that provides a draw or a feeling of attraction for that man. Not necessarily because he's so attracted to that person, though obviously that can be part of it, but because he's attracted to feeling like a man and feeling like he wants to be relied on and an equal partner. And for women, if somebody who comes in and plays the role of a masculine man who's also organized and structured and meeting her halfway, that can be a draw for attraction. And then this can just create these extra layers of complication in a relationship. Like, it doesn't mean somebody's going to go cheat or, not be infidelity in the relationship, not be infidelity, not the word infidelity. So it doesn't mean that that's going to take place necessarily, but it's also not going to benefit the relationship by any means to feel like, now you have different attractions to other people and different things. So this is really important to recognize. And the base theme here that I want you to see is that both parties actually want an equal relationship. Like these side-by-side relationships where we feel like there's an equal partnership is what is attractive and what makes marriages last long term. Now, sometimes, to give another little piece of background, and then I'll go into a little bit of like what to do, sometimes somebody can be initially attracted to traits in another person that remind them of needs they didn't get met. So it's not uncommon. Let's say if a male feels like he's being parented by a female, sometimes maybe he had like issues around his mom not being there or not showing up to organize him and structure him. Sometimes for women, it can be, if they feel like they have a relationship with a male who's like a parent. Sometimes it can be that they felt like they had missing needs from their father growing up. And sometimes that can be like one of the attraction points or pulls that leads to age differences in a relationship dynamic. And age differences are fine. Like there's nothing wrong with that. But what can be interesting to recognize is your age difference about you feeling a need that you didn't get met from a parent? And if so, we can only actually feel empowered by somebody else meeting that for us for so long before we actually have to take accountability and become our own parents and heal those wounds and show up for ourselves so that we can move into a side-by-side relationship with equality in a partnership, which is ultimately what makes relationships last long term. So just a really important point to note there. So when one person doesn't feel this equality, there's resentment, but usually if one person doesn't feel it, two people are not feeling it to a certain degree for just opposing reasons. So what do we do about this? Well, number one, we have to be able to communicate what our needs are. It's often that women will say, oh, my partner never does the dishes, and then I'll be like, okay, and how often do you ask him? And it'll be like, well, he should know. The he should know or she should know does not work. That's not, it would be nice if life worked like that, but it doesn't. So, it's not just the communication of needs, it's the clarity in how you communicate your needs. You have to like paint a picture of what it looks like. Hey, I would like you to do the dishes every time after, dinner is made and served, 5 nights of the week or whatever it is. It needs to be super clear, super to the point, like picture needs to be painted, and it also needs to be followed up on. You have to see your needs through. And then when this takes place, and I don't mean to use these like super stereotypical examples, I just like to pick like really easy things that we see in movies or things that people have like familiar reference points for, which movies tend to be a little stereotypical. So let's say we have that. See your needs through, speak up about them, and even develop a strategy like, hey, you can do the dishes while I'm doing X, Y, and Z, while I'm putting the kids to bed or whatever it might be. So that's number one. Communicate your needs, paint a picture, see them through. Number two, people have to also set boundaries. If somebody really doesn't want to do the dishes at a certain time, they have to say, you know what, I hear that you need the dishes to be done, but I'm not going to do them in the evening because I really don't like doing that. I acknowledge your needs. I'm going to do them in the morning because that fits better for me. And I need you to respect that. So there needs to be like a negotiation that takes place. It's not just because you communicate a need that both parties have to be like, oh, now I'm caged in and I have to meet that need on your terms at all times. No. There needs to be something that works for both people, that both parties are agreeing to, because in doing that, there's the absence of resentment. And number three, it's very important that both of you are acknowledging and appreciating each other when these things are done. Hey, I see that you heard me. Thank you so much for doing the dishes. Oh, hey, thanks so much for cooking, and I appreciate you doing that. There has to be an acknowledgement, a negotiation, boundaries, and the expression of needs. And it's through doing this that we open up the dialogue for both parties to express what they want, to show up in terms of like getting seen as who they are and what they desire in a relationship. And when both people set boundaries and negotiate, they both feel taken into consideration. And then when we follow this up with positive reinforcement and appreciation and acknowledgement, it actually is sort of like the hardening of the cement that allows these things to become the new natural habits of what takes place in a relationship. And this is so important for things to work long term. So there's so much more I could say about this, and there's so much more we could dive into around this topic, but it's a very common challenge that I often see. So I hope that all makes sense. I hope that is very clear to everybody. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. And please like, share, and subscribe to this video or channel. And yeah, I'll see you in the next video.